Get your kicks, Route 66. I don't actually know if that's talking about shoes, but we're talking about shoes today, because today we are talking all about pastors and their shoes. And as a side note up front, maybe I'm not the most qualified person to do this because, frankly, I enjoy a good pair of shoes. But recently, pastors and their shoes have really been in the spotlight thanks to an account called PreachersNSneakers, which I found on Instagram. I think they're on Twitter as well, maybe Facebook. But this account specifically is looking at high-profile evangelical pastors like Rich Wilkerson, like Chad Veach, John Gray, T.D. Jakes, Stephen Furtick, and a whole lot more, and highlighting the fact that a lot of them are wearing these shoes that cost hundreds of dollars and maybe even over $1,000. And they're kind of questioning whether pastors should be wearing shoes that cost that much money. And this account, well, it's really blown up and it's gotten lots of followers, and it's really just started this conversation around, is this okay for pastors to be wearing shoes like this? And it really reignites the conversations about pastors living lives of luxury. Oftentimes we've seen in the news pastors buying these large houses, or whether it was Creflo Dollar and his airplane that he was buying. And we hear about prosperity gospel preachers who are telling people that the gospel is a route to get rich, and they are flaunting their own wealth. And in a lot of circles, it sparks outrage, and people are denouncing these pastors, saying it's not okay. And now this time around, it's based on their shoes. And so this is my hot take on preachers and sneakers. And is it okay for pastors to be wearing $1,000 shoes? And as easy as it would be for me to sit here and judge them from afar and say, no, we need to condemn them, don't listen to these guys, it's not okay what they are doing, I just can't do that. As much as you'd probably love for me to do that, I just don't think that we as outsiders to their lives should be judging them and condemning them for these things that we might not know the whole story to. Many of these shoes, they could have been gifts, or I don't know the story of them, but I don't want to find myself in the position that Jesus described of calling out a speck in someone else's eye when I have a log in my own eye. Because when it comes to greed and when it comes to material possessions, it is so easy for us to look at others and say what they are doing is too much, but I'm okay. But my question for you is, if it's not okay for a pastor to have $1,000 sneakers, is it okay for them to have $1,000 phones? Or is it okay for them to drive $1,000 more expensive cars, or to spend $1,000 on anything extra, to have a, $3,000 car instead of a $2,000 car, or a $31,000 car instead of a $30,000 car? And I know what you're about to say is, well, okay, but no one needs to spend $1,000 on shoes. And I mean, I agree. I would never spend $1,000 on shoes because I don't have $1,000 to spend on shoes. And I would rather spend that $1,000 on other things. But who am I to say that that is blatantly wrong and that they can't do that and that makes them a horrible person? Now, before you get mad at me for saying this, look, would I do that? Do I think it's the right move to be wearing shoes that seem like just a really excessive expense to everyone else? No, because I think that could be a stumbling block to people listening to your message. And I think a lot of these pastors are delivering messages that are reaching thousands of people and are impacting so many people for Christ, and that when you're in that position, you want to be really careful to not do anything that could affect your witness to all these other people. And if these things are going to be a stumbling block, then I would suggest pumping the brakes. But at the same time, I don't want to get down this rabbit trail of saying this is too much, but this isn't. Because it's so easy for us to cherry pick what is excessive and what isn't excessive in other people's lives and not pay attention to it in our own lives. The fact is, if you're watching this video, you were probably exceedingly wealthy. If you were living in the United States, if you were making over $30,000 a year or something like that, you are in the top 1% in the world, which blows my mind. But the more we go down this path, it becomes, how poor is poor enough for you for a pastor? Is it okay for a pastor to make $35,000 and be in the top 1% of the world? I mean, even though that's going to be low in the US, is it okay for them to make $45, $50? Are they allowed to wear $100 shoes, or do they have to wear $50 shoes? Because you can find $50 shoes and they would work just fine. You see what I'm saying? It's a slippery slope. And again, yes, it's excessive to be wearing shoes like that, and I don't think it's a great witness to their ministry, and I think it could be a stumbling block, and I think it could send mixed messages to people that they could equate Christianity with prosperity, which is not something I see promised in the gospel, at least this side of eternity. But again, is it really time to say we can't listen to these guys, that these guys are bad, that they need to turn from their ways, that these shoes need to be sold and given to the poor? It'd be great if they did that. And the fact is, I bet a lot of these guys are more generous than any of us. And again, if we don't have a relationship with these guys, is it really our job to call them out for these things? And how poor will ever be poor enough for you? Again, would I do it? I don't think it's a great thing to do. I don't think it's the best witness to their ministry. But I'm not going to call them out for this. And I think it's our job to have a little grace. It's so easy for us to preach grace all the time and talk about how God has grace for everyone and then not have grace for these guys. Even if what they're doing is wrong, shouldn't we have grace for them? Should we call them out in love if they are in sin? Perhaps. And if you really feel convicted to do that, I'm not going to stop you from doing that. If you feel like that is your cross to carry, that you need to call these pastors out for wearing expensive shoes, then you go for it by all means. But for me, that's just not the approach I'm going to take, because I don't see any real grounding to make these claims, because I don't know that maybe they have an expensive pair of shoes, but they live well below their means in other areas, and maybe that pair of shoes was a gift to them. I don't know the whole story, so I just don't think it's my place to call them out. Not that anyone was asking me to call them out, but since this is a topic that is floating around, especially in Christian circles, I thought it was worth making a video on and talking about just a little bit. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Maybe you disagree and you have really strong opinions on this and you have scripture to back that up and you just really think this is something we need to be going after. I'd love to hear your thoughts, genuinely. Maybe I'm wrong on this. Maybe I'm not seeing the full picture. Maybe you know more than I do. But this is just where I stand right now. I'd love to hear where you stand, and I would love to just have this conversation continue in a healthy and fruitful way that is filled with love on all sides, no matter what your stance is towards it. So if you've enjoyed this video, I hope you click like. I hope you leave a comment letting me know what you think about this whole topic. And if you want to see more videos like this, be sure to hit subscribe. I'll be posting new content to this channel very frequently, so I hope you come back and look for more. Until then, have a great rest of whatever day it is for you in the future when you're watching this, and go out and live a life full of love.